Welcome back, folks.
Welcome back.
Hey, we got lots of positive feedback and exciting things said about podcast number 1.
It's always refreshing.
I guess I just assumed it was garbage.
It's just going to live somewhere, go somewhere and die.
Yeah. So here we are again. Last time we said that we should have a drink in our hands next time we do it. And I'll be darned if we don't have a drink in our hands.
We do. Thanks to Jordy Wetzel.
If you're watching this on the Chroma Creative YouTube channel, there's video there. Thanks for our good friend, the C70, and massive light.
Massive.
Over there. If
you're watching see our story
right now. You could. You go to our Instagram and look at the stories within the next 24 hours, exactly. Which would be about 6 days too late from now. We have Old Fashions. I found a YouTube channel, which I'll find somewhere to link because I don't remember the name of it, but he gives you like a cheap old fashioned you can make at home, the best old fashioned you can make at home, and then like what high end bars do with their old fashions. And
I don't know which version this is, but it's wonderful.
This is the cheap one.
It's wonderful.
Cheap at home because I didn't have the good whiskey. So this is Benchmark, which the guys at the store told me.
That's good.
It is not bad.
No.
The guys at the store told me that it is, because I went in looking for Buffalo Trace, and they said Benchmark is just Buffalo Trace, not as old, not as aged.
Well, I mean, that's fantastic.
It is not bad.
It is not.
My wife got us.
There's a future in this for you if this video stuff doesn't work out.
You were just hearing the large ball of ice in my cup. It makes a difference. He does talk about ice in the video. This is not a whiskey podcast.
It's not.
Yet.
Could be. Show of hands.
How many of you want this to be a whiskey podcast? I have a few friends that would enjoy that. I'm going to start with a quote.
Let's do it.
Most of you will have heard most of this quote. Let me say this. Most of you will have heard at least the first half of the quote.
Agreed. If not everybody.
If not everybody. Some will have heard the full quote, which is rarely used. Jack of all trades is a master of none. But there's more.
There is more.
Though often better than a master of one. One more time. A jack of all trades is a master of none, though often better than a master of one. So what we want to talk about today is where we started and where we're at.
Absolutely.
And what we think about that. So I'll sort of start with where my mindset was early on, and then maybe you can help bring us into a little more.
I could be the devil's advocate either way. So.
I like that.
Yeah.
Some of my favorite people are devil's advocates.
I'm just very opinionated on both sides of this one. So
you know, and before we get into the details of our experience, let's just talk big picture about it.
Sure.
About the quote, because I think you just said, and I'd like to hear from you on what you meant by it, but there are positives on both sides. There are negatives.
Agreed.
To both sides. And obviously this is pretty general stuff, but I think that you'll see when we take this approach into your art or your craft or your work, it isn't right and wrong.
No.
But knowing where you are and where you're going, I think is valuable.
Agreed. Like having a plan is always helpful, and just winging it constantly is just destructive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I've done it.
Same. I'm pretty good at it, actually.
So I often think of like some of, I often envy, there's a generation of man who like did a thing, a craft, a trade, like started in middle school, fine-tuned it, continued to do it, was disciplined at it, and then turned it into a career, and then like retired.
And it's an identity at that point.
It's who they are.
Yes. Like, I mean, that's how they're described. Like
Joe the welder.
Exactly. Or the carpenter, or the shoe cobbler. I don't know what those things are.
They cobble shoes.
Somebody cobbles shoes. But yeah, I mean, it's like your trade was also like just how people knew you. Like, Go see the farrier. It's like not Jordy, not Jeremy, the farrier.
Yep.
No matter what your name is, like it still applied. Like that's who you were. And that has really changed.
It has, because maybe for lots of reasons, maybe. But I will say I envied and still do, those men who like committed their life to a craft, and they're just like, they couldn't be better at it.
Agreed.
Not that they couldn't grow in other areas of their, if you take like welding or a trade, obviously I think if you ask any welder, are you amazing at every, they're going to say, oh no, like there's guys.
Sure.
But they were a master of one, right? Like they weren't a jack of all trades. They committed themselves. And so I think early on, that's what I wanted to be.
Sure.
I want to be amazing at a thing.
Agreed.
I have way too many interests.
That's exactly my problem.
Jeremy and I often, I'll say this, earlier on today, my wife said, we were going through sort of our list of things we needed to knock out today for the business. And she was like, I need a clone. And I was like, me too. And I said, wait, I sort of already have one. Jeremy and I are a lot alike in that we have lots of interests.
We do. And we'll get there. I feel like there is value there as well, though.
100%. We're valuable.
We are valuable. And we're the same. I'm clone. Can a clone be older than you, though? Is that?
I think I'd be your clone, technically.
That's sad. I'm sorry.
I'm your mini-me.
Maybe.
I think one of the things that has changed is that maybe those guys who we were referring to, maybe another generation of men and women, it's not just men, but I think being a man, I think I wanted to be like some of those men.
Sure.
But I think one of the things that's changed is that we have more access to people's lives now.
Agreed.
Right? Like the generation of men I'm talking about, like they weren't online. There weren't social media didn't exist.
Yeah.
So maybe from the outside looking in, they were a master.
Very possible. Yeah.
Maybe at home or maybe in their personal life, they were a bit of a jack of all trades. But now, like, if you go look at my Instagram feed, it's like, you couldn't walk away saying, you might be able to say, oh, he's into like photo video.
Sure.
But like, everything else, you're going to see music and cars and all kinds of stuff.
You could do the same on either of my Instagrams.
Right.
I try to keep them separate for a reason.
Your two mastered crafts, you keep them separate.
Yeah, something like that.
But so maybe that's part of it. Maybe it was an illusion, and they really were disciplined and good at their craft. But maybe they also had other interests that distracted them into other areas of life that prevented them from being the absolute best that they could be at their thing. Now, that's a negative way to say it.
Sure.
Another way to say it was like maybe they had more life.
That's
maybe
true.
they lived more life than welding I'm not just talking about trades. I don't know why I only keep using trades as examples.
I get that. Well, but because that applies. It's very applicable to work and to trades because like the men that you're speaking of, that's exactly where my mind goes. It's like it is the carpenters and like and I mean even biblically, you know what I mean? Like Jesus was a carpenter. You know what I mean? It's like those people, especially if you want to say just in the Bible alone, like everybody was by their trade. That's who they were. But at the same time, I can only fathom.
Paul was a murderer.
Exactly.
That's what he did.
And Adam's one rib less. What I can only imagine though is like, I'm sure they had to lean into that, like to provide probably.
Sure.
Right. But also it's like, I'm sure times in living were much more difficult. So I'd say like they were a master of probably other things just to survive. You know what I mean? But that's not their, I hate to say identity, but like that is not, it's not what they're known for.
I bet there was a level of like access to knowledge, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
if you or I want to pick up a new thing, craft, hobby, whatever, you can you could spend weeks, months, years online learning that craft. Then like if they didn't know a carpenter or they didn't know, like nowadays, if you're like, I want to get into crypto.
Sure.
Like you would pre the internet.
Yeah.
You got to go find somebody that's into crypto.
Exactly.
And like beg them to teach you their ways. Right. So then if you've invested all that time in finding someone who's willing to teach you, you're probably more likely. Maybe that's what it's all come down to is like, we're just distracted.
Probably. Honestly, I mean, I think, well, that's a whole new podcast. I think distraction is a root of a lot of evil.
Yeah.
Sadly.
Well, it's certainly, in my life, it's made focus a challenge.
Oh, for certain.
And both in work and in my personal life.
Same.
I've got like, we talked a little bit about project cars last time, but I mean, I can like be super excited and motivated in a certain direction and then like see one photo on Instagram and it changes everything.
Absolutely.
I think Jesus referred. We're talking about Jesus in this episode. I ain't scared.
I ain't know me either.
That's like there's a verse where he talks about like you move with the winds, like you're as water washes sand, you sort of slide away with. I'm that guy a lot of times. Like I'm not the Rock. I'm not Peter. I'm not built on a solid enough foundation, obviously, or often enough that I end up being swayed. But I think to bring this sort of back home, when I first started creating content, digital content, with the intention to do it full time. So this is, I'd spent years doing video work and then freelance, making a little bit of money on the side. And then when we made the decision to take a step toward full-time, I sort of started thinking big picture about the company that I wanted to build or the business that I wanted to build. And my first thought, I don't know why. I think I do know why. I'll get to that in just a second. But my first thought was like diversifying.
Sure.
I have to offer enough stuff that potential clients would see me as an asset. And so I think I assumed that I needed to have enough options for a potential client that I'd be sort of their one-stop shop.
Sure.
I could do their photos, I could do their video, I could do their website, I could do their marketing, I could do their like campaign marketing, I could do their like yearly planning for anything marketing. I could design their billboards. And I'm not saying that we don't still do some of those things.
Sure.
But in my mind, I had to be all of those things
to everybody,
to all of my clients.
Agreed.
And I think that I said I didn't think I knew why, but I think the obvious answer to why is I thought that's how I could provide.
Sure.
I thought I would have to do all of those things to make enough money to be able to provide for my family.
Well, I mean, and here we go again. If we're called to serve, it makes it, and I feel like you and I share this trait, is at the end of the day, we want to be really good at whatever we set our minds and hands to, but not at the expense of people.
Sure.
Whether that's our families, our wives, our kids, or our clients, like we want to give them the best experience possible. And if that means we can offer A plus B, well, in our minds, probably to some degree, it's like, that's helpful. That's what I need to do. But I mean, like Tim says, it's black and white and there's some gray area.
There's some gray.
Too. Yeah.
And again, this isn't a bad thing. Like, for me, there were times when it was life-giving to be able to not have to think about an edit and go like work on a client's landing page.
Sure. Or
to not have to think about an edit and instead go edit headshots or like a family photo session. And I was doing everything early on. But then I think one of the first things that happened is that as I was sort of living life in the world of digital content creation and freelancers, I started meeting other people.
Absolutely.
And I started meeting other people who were better, like a lot better, like at a lot of the things I was trying to do, but they were like honed in. Like that's what they did.
Yeah.
And guilt's probably not the right word, but I started feeling like dumb for trying to do their job when it's like I could do a better job at my thing, you could do a better job at your thing, and our client is going to get a better result after the fact.
Sure. But I mean, I'm competitive in nature, and that pours into a little bit of that for me probably. But at the same time, it's like, I very much agree. Like, I very much know people that are better at things than like, this is much more your wheelhouse. Like, I mean, I stopped doing like newborn photos really quickly. And it's not because I don't love kids. I adore kids. It's like the time and the effort, and like, I couldn't guarantee my results. And like, I couldn't live with that. I was like, I can't charge you if I don't know what I can give you. And I'm not okay with that.
And was time a part of that?
Yeah. Time,
like the investment of time?
Very much. I mean, it's way more time for the same amount of, profit, if you would, or the same charge. Cause like, it's not the baby's fault that they need to sleep for longer, but it's like, I would be there for 3 hours and walk away defeated. I mean,
and that points to a skill set, right?
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
like someone who's amazing at that, and I'm not even going to try to take a shot at how long these things take because I've never done, I have no idea.
No.
But I would imagine that someone who's really skilled at it can provide a similar or the same quality result as you could.
Absolutely.
In a significantly less amount of time.
Agreed.
So again, better for the client, better for the artist, like better for the baby in that scenario.
Better for me because I didn't have to try.
Right. And so, I have a direct equivalent to that it was web.
Oh, okay.
And, I think one of the reasons I was, we grew our company and were able to go full time is because we diversified in a lot of ways. And so again, it's some positive, some negative. But for me, one of the things I learned is that our clients didn't want to do the work of going to find someone else.
Absolutely.
So if they're like, oh, you do web, and then you're like, you're their web guy.
Yep.
And I'd never wanted to be the web guy.
Mm-hmm.
To me, photo, video, or photo, web, digital design, like those things were means to an end.
Sure.
Like they were always about getting them to do video, because I felt like early on I knew that my skill set really, it was seated in storytelling through video.
Sure.
And so if I could get them to, the video price tag was scary sometimes. And so if I could like, well, let me build your website, or let me do your headshots. Yep. I could get them to video. And then we did figure out folks liked a one-stop shop.
Absolutely.
But man, it was exhausting.
I agreed. And I think there's some value there too. Is like, you can offer that same service if you don't provide the service, if you just have the referral, or, like maybe you accept the job, but then you not lease it out, but you turn around and just like,
you white label it.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
You just turn around and like you hire someone to do that part of it for you.
Man, that's easier said than done.
Oh, for sure.
Like we're a team of 3 now, Chroma Creative is. And, there were times, like things were really tight. And so like, if I'm looking at an invoice and on that invoice, I've got X amount of dollars for video, X amount of dollars for photo, and X amount of dollars for web, I'm like, I'll stay up. Mm-hmm. I'll stay up and do that web work.
Absolutely.
Because here's the issue. I think you and I share this trait, because I can.
Oh, for sure.
Right? It's like it might take me 6 times as long.
Absolutely.
But I can do it.
It's just time.
It's just time. I can get more of it anytime I want. Right.
Right.
So it was tempting to be like, well, I'll just do it because frankly, I need the money.
Sure. Absolutely.
But I think where I want to go ultimately is to encourage creators to consider at least spending a season focused.
Agreed.
And I think that I wouldn't necessarily do it I don't know that I could do it any differently if we went back. Like if we just came out of the gate and we're like, we are video guys.
Yep. No regrets.
No regrets. Did I say that?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Even we can talk a little bit more about how we've specialized and how we feel like we have a niche in our market. Mm-hmm. But I think if I were to go back and try to do what we've done for the past couple of years, really early on, I don't know that we would have been successful.
I get that. Well, let me ask you a question.
Okay.
Because I'm curious to your answer, because like mine might be different. Say looking forward, like obviously we can't change the past, and who would want to, right? And that's why we are where we are. But going forward, do you feel like location and like demographics play a part in whether you can really dive into a niche like full on, or if like you have to kind of have some splits in the road a little bit here and there? Like, because I often felt like prior to coming on here, like if I didn't offer some of these other things, like then I wasn't going to get to work.
Sure. No, it's a fantastic point. You think about like big markets,
exactly,
like LA and New York, and even like parts of Texas and Florida, and even Nashville. Like,
oh, for sure, Nashville's
close
huge
to us. We're in Upper East Tennessee, but in those markets, I think you do have a little more of an option to just sort of go on scene as like even niche within a niche.
Agreed.
Like you can be a colorist.
Yep.
Like there's enough work happening, enough guys that have found their lane that you get to sort of be in yours. I do think you're right. I think that being in an area that's not, I don't know what's the differentiating factor, but I do think that in our part of the country, we definitely have to start not as specialized.
Agreed.
And can sort of over time, and I think part of it's meeting people.
Yes.
Like now I have like Jeremy does anything photography oriented. Like Jeremy leads that part of what we do. And before we brought Jeremy on, I still know like 3 or 4 really talented photographers that I know without a shadow of a doubt that they could do better work than I could from a photo standpoint. And so I would use them. But I think that's part of it, is knowing people, like being able to say, okay, I'm going to offload this.
Sure.
And even that's easier in a bigger market, right?
Oh yeah. Even if it's just like editing, I'm going to shoot this,
Totally.
but I don't have the time to edit because I have this other shoot coming up.
Right.
You know, and that's harder here. Well, honestly, I don't know anybody local. Like, you know what? Edit this for me. Like, can I pay you? You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, I've done that for other people.
There are guys that do what we do.
Yeah, exactly.
That we could say, do you have any bandwidth to knock out an edit for me?
Yeah. But it's not even like that's all they do, I guess is what I was trying to say.
They're not just editors.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Like, everybody has to be spread a little bit thin. So.
Yeah, that's a great point. And and I do think that, COVID had an impact on these things. I don't know exactly what or how, but I do think that, like, for example, I know of a handful of like local businesses that I would consider small business who like hired on full-time media guys.
Yep.
And like stole up some of those freelancers that used to be around here who now like they're their go-to. They have an in-house media guy. I think that COVID definitely caused a lot of that. And like, if you think about those guys, they're masters of none. Like if they're the quote unquote media guy at the like name your small business, like they're shooting video, they're shooting photo, they're designing digital assets, they're doing podcasting, they're like managing social media, they're trying to do billboard design, they're trying to, they're doing it all. And man, like I will say, maybe that's a breeding ground for like, maybe said guy who works for said small business as their media guy. He used to be a freelancer. Now he's getting this experience in these things, and maybe he figures out, well, I'm like really good at
X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to go do that somewhere.
Exactly.
And then you either like figure out how to do it here on your own full time, or you go to a bigger market where you can hop right in and do just that.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying it's that. I wouldn't know because I've never done it, but I wouldn't imagine it's as easy as just hop right in and go. But, I think like one of my favorite YouTube channels is Rob Machado. And Rob is a cinematographer in LA. I think he's in LA. And like anytime I ever watch one of his videos and he's doing like a behind the scenes, he talks a lot about like codec and format. Like he'll say, this isn't, for example, he'll say like, this isn't a Cinetone because we're handing it off today to the client.
Gotcha.
Like they're not touching post. And like everything he does, I think he even said in one of his videos, like, forgive my editing because I never edit.
What?
Like for his YouTube, like his YouTube channel is the only thing he ever edits for.
That's crazy.
It's like he built out this like Ford Transit, like camera truck, has like a fleet of Sony new like full frame cinema bodies, and he's fun. I mean, he's unbelievable as a cinematographer. His if we're camera or lens shopping, I'll go see if he has like a thing. Another guy, Griffin Conway, is a big Canon user, and Griffin's similar in that like he, as far as I know, like he's primarily a cinematographer, and he hands off footage to editors. And I think I've handed off footage one time to get to the point to go to like, I would consider if you live in our part of the country and are able to be like dedicated in the video space, that's specialized.
Agreed.
I think you go big market, that's not specialized at all.
It's not.
It's like, are you a cinematographer? Are you a first AC? Are you a colorist? Are you
DP?
Yeah. Like, what do you? So like for us, I consider it a gift that we have, for the most part, really specialized as video creators.
Agreed.
And now that doesn't mean, and I've already referenced a couple times just in this episode that like you do photo work for us. But again, it still means to an end. Like
Absolutely.
It's still, like we rarely get like, can you photo my thing calls? And if we do, we almost always encourage them to go with one of our friends who do photo work prior to you being around.
I wasn't offended.
But even then, like if it doesn't somehow tie into a bigger like picture, probably like if we got a call to go do headshots, I would probably just say, Jeremy, go freelance that. Like we're not, if they're not interested in video, then we probably wouldn't even fool with it. That sounds negative, but
well, we don't want to be known for that.
Right. We don't
want that to take over things that, well, I don't say that they're more important because that's not necessarily true, but there are things that we would rather do and dedicate our time to than headshots.
And that we feel better at.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a big thing with weddings that we've talked about a few times. Like we have, for whatever, being in the Southeast, like we have a lot of really great wedding venues.
Agreed. A lot.
There's one really close by to us here who our friend's family owns, and they've been in like major bridal magazines, and
they're booked.
They stay booked up
weekend.
And so because of that, wedding photographers and cinematographers just have popped up. And same thing with weddings. Like I'll often refer to some of our friends who shoot weddings because they've specialized.
Yep.
That's what they do.
Absolutely.
And like, that doesn't mean they won't do like a corporate gig here or there, or a small business like evergreen video, but they're primarily wedding cinematographers.
Sure.
And the same's true with us. Like it's not that we won't do a wedding.
Absolutely.
But it's not sort of our niche. It's not our specialty.
Yep.
So I think if I'm circling all the way back to the beginning, I think you have to spend time doing everything.
Yep.
To figure out like what is it that you feel you have a sort of a natural leaning toward.
Try to find your lane.
Yep.
Yep.
What's the need in your area?
And that's hard to
It's
determine.
super hard.
Like who decides what's needed?
100%. I think ultimately the market does. Like
it does.
Your clients. If one of the things we kept hearing early on was people say, I feel like our content is getting in front of all the right people.
Sure.
I feel like it's the right message. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't look professional. It doesn't, and that's obviously a very shallow and blanket term, but we felt like we could provide something that people would often say, it's sort of like the depth of field thing. Like if you show someone a photo and then a photo with more depth of field, they're almost always going to say that the more depth of field one is like the quote unquote pro.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the professional look.
Absolutely.
And so it's not just gear, but it's like lighting and telling a visual story that often our clients are like, whoa, that feels different.
Absolutely.
Like for example, there's a local TV has been dead in other parts of the country for decades. For us, it's just recently dying.
Yes.
And, or at least ads for local TV. And maybe this is normal for all parts of the country with local TV, but here, used to, if you would buy an ad, like a 30-second ad on local network, the TV station would come shoot your ad for free.
Oh, wow.
So like if you buy the ad, they come shoot it for free. And so we had clients that were dissatisfied. We've had clients in the past that are like, they'll call us. We've seen your work. We want to make that sort of content. So then we're like, okay. And we quote the content and they're like, oh man, didn't think it'd be that expensive.
Sure.
They do it for free.
Exactly.
And I'm like, wait, isn't that why you called though? Because you weren't happy
exactly
with what they did?
And it doesn't look the same.
Oh no.
Like if you wanted that free work, you would have called them first.
And so all that to say, we, over 3.5, 4 years of doing it full time, we've been able to sort of, I think partially because of our sort of angle and partially because of what our clients have told others, we've become like, we've specialized in video. We may specialize more and get even more focused in the future, but we've been able to sort of be video first, if nothing else. And it doesn't mean we don't do photo. It doesn't mean we don't do, like we're wrapping up web work right now for a client, but it doesn't mean we don't do those things. But I think the bigger picture, if you zoom way out, it's that early on, I think we were trying to be an ad agency.
Sure.
Like we wanted to be a marketing agency that like we handle everything from like the initial phone call to building out your marketing campaign and deploying it for you.
I get that. I mean, and there was a season that I wanted to do something similar, but where I would build a photo brand that had multiple photographers under the umbrella that shot different styles intentionally. That way, if I got an inquiry for this shoot that's not my style, I have someone that fits that bill.
Like under your name.
Yeah, under my name. But it's like, I don't know, like my friend Sam Stroud in Virginia does this very well. But he edits every one of the weddings that they shoot. So like it's still his look. It's still his look and it's still his client. And his team's fantastic. And Sam's a fantastic guy. Actually, his wife's from Johnson City, which is a small world. But I don't know, like some things I just don't, I'm always curious if it, like I mentioned earlier, if like where we're at, where our dynamic, like some of those things just can't take legs because of where we are.
Sure.
Like I feel, and I've said this in the past, not on here, but like I feel like my work is so much more appreciated in places like Knoxville and Asheville, where it's like people see the value differently.
Yeah.
And that's refreshing. Not that people don't value it here, But real quick, I want to say, I think, you'd mentioned being video first, but I think one thing that you don't give yourself enough credit for is you are very much people first. You know what I mean? I feel like, you are very good at what you do, and that is no secret. And, you knew I felt that way before I came on. But I think at the end of the day, creating those relationships with these clients are really what make the difference and separate you from other people.
Well, I really appreciate that. And it is it is definitely a part of it. I think that you could be the best cinematographer, like have the best eye for lighting, color, angles, like set design. Like you could be the best in the world at those things, but like if you're not a good hang, if people don't enjoy being around you and trust you, like that's going to get you little to nowhere. And I don't say that from a so turn up the knob, turn up the people knob. I'm just saying like it's going to come out.
It's genuine.
Who you are is going to come out in those conversations. And we certainly try to be honest with folks. We do think that we pull story out of people. I think that's another craft. That I've yet to find like a course for. It's like, hey, how do you?
It's coming.
Hey, we made a little announcement at the end here. When someone sits down in front of a camera and they're already nervous and uncomfortable, pulling story out of them that feels genuine and honest and not polished and rehearsed is a real challenge. Absolutely. And we do think we found success in that lane. And so we do a lot of the stories we get to tell are meaningful because we've in some way made a name for ourselves in that sort of lane.
Absolutely.
So it's definitely a part of it.
Oh yeah,
at least for us.
I think it's a big part of it.
Yeah. So I think that if there's a takeaway, I think one of them is that you have to spend time in a lot of spaces.
Agreed.
And there are lots of ways to do that. I don't know that there's a better way to do it than just go do it.
I agree.
But once you have spent time, I think figuring out an area that you can run in, a lane you can run in, I think serves you better. I think even if it's just for the sake of like the satisfaction of completing things.
Absolutely.
Like if you're too diverse, you have too many irons in the fire, like you're going to be frustrated all the time.
You can't tick the boxes.
Right. And that's a big thing. Like for our personality type, like that's accomplishment at the end of the day plays a big role in how motivated we are the next day.
Absolutely.
And so don't get yourself so deep in things that you can't win any of them.
Yep.
But get involved in enough stuff in your space. These are all so general terms. Stuff
and things.
Get involved in enough things that you can sort of figure out what gets you going.
Yep.
And and other people. Like if like you've decided my thing is photo.
Sure.
And like even so another step in, like my thing is wedding photography. If other people are going, who took these pictures? Like they're terrible. Then maybe like either try a lot harder.
Sure.
Or like it might not be your lane.
Absolutely.
If other people are going, like if you're sort of in the exploratory phase and as a photographer and you're like shooting some for fun, your family, and you shoot a wedding for a friend, and
because
like,
they're going to ask you.
They're going to ask you,
yeah.
And people are like, "Oh my gosh, like I've never seen work like this." That might be your lane.
Absolutely.
Like explore it, like lean into it.
I think there's a fine line there too. Like you could be really really good at it, but if you don't enjoy it.
100%.
You've got to like also like take a step back and be like, I'm really good at this. I can apply this elsewhere where I would be happier.
Because that'll die.
1,000%.
But yet you will burn out unbelievably quick if you don't. And the other thing is like I'm not talking about financial goals.
Oh no,
I'm not even just talking like that could be part of it. It's like if you want to support yourself and your family full time, then finding your lane there's a whole conversation to that side of it. But just from a fulfillment standpoint, as a creator, as an artist. You're gonna just spin your wheels in areas that you're not sort of skilled in, and other people are confirming that like, hey, that's good. Now, from the other side, like if you enjoy it and other people are saying it's terrible, who cares?
Absolutely,
it's your thing, not their thing.
Well, my thing behind that is, and I was going to ask you this, but since we're in it, I'll just throw my 2 cents out there anyway. It's like no matter what you're doing, say you're into video full time, that's all you're interested in. But if you take a break from those things and also listen to music or explore art or take photos or whatever your hobby is, like you're finding inspiration for that thing you love
100%
by taking some time away from that sometimes too. And I feel like a lot of people forget that. They're like, I've got to do it. I've got to do it all the time or I will lose my rhythm or I'll, and it's like, what if there's inspiration from other things that would make your work stronger?
Totally.
So I always encourage people to like, and I think that's just my personality and yours probably is like, we always have a bunch of irons in the fire either way.
Totally.
Whether it's personal or fun or work, but it's like, you mentioned it earlier, but we're up to 3 cars now that we're working on.
Yes, we are.
So not just 1 or 2. But it's like, but we enjoy it. It's not like, but that, I don't know. It's exciting on a different level to like create something else and make something else work.
One of the things that Jeremy and I have been talking about a lot because of his role in what we do is there's this term that I think I brought it from the audio world. So growing up playing music and recording music, we often would like spend all day in the studio working on a track. We, at the end of that day, are like so pumped and jazzed on what we have done. You come back in the next morning and it's garbage.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, what were we thinking? Like, this is terrible.
It happens.
So we like the term fresh ears, like hearing something with fresh ears. And I think the same is true visually. Like,
oh, yeah.
But not just like seeing like a photo, but like, for example, Jeremy will often, Jeremy's photo first, but also a big part of his role is editing, it's post-production. And so Jeremy will knock out an edit, like an initial edit before the client's ever seen it. And he'll show me the first pass. And without question, I would have shipped that pass. Like I would have said, this is great, sending it to the client. But because I've never seen it, I have completely fresh eyes on this edit. I see a million opportunities to improve it.
Absolutely.
That's not a shot at your edit.
No,
but we've talked about this. Like I can see it with fresh eyes. And I think if I'm the one that did the work, it also can feel frustrating for myself. Like I may let some stuff pass.
Sure.
So I'm like, I just want to be done with this.
Sure.
So I think we make each other better.
I agree.
In that way.
I agree.
And so like, it's another part. I think I use that example to back all the way out of like, if you are finding yourself really passionate and motivated in a specific focused craft, spending time away from that craft, like you just said, will help you reapproach it with fresh eyes.
Absolutely.
And be either more excited and motivated or like, I don't know if I like this as much as I thought.
Absolutely.
I did. And now there's a whole nother side to this conversation.
Yep.
Which is the value of discipline.
Yep.
Right? Like I consider myself a storyteller through video. You consider yourself maybe the same through photo.
I do.
There have been times I hate video.
Same.
Just despise the thing that I'm doing.
Sure.
And maybe it's like a gig that doesn't have a lot of artistic influence. I don't have any influence at all. Or maybe it's not. Maybe I have a ton of influence, but I'm just like not feeling it.
Sure.
Because I'm an emotional being.
Same. The same thing is like if I'm at a spot, even if it's like the coolest venue and like I'm loving it, if the people there are like not vibing well with me, it's like I don't want to look at them again for 8 hours, to like.
Well, and it could be them, it could be you.
Could be for sure.
And so there's value in like, I got to do this, like it or not.
Yep.
And that circles back to that thing I envy of the previous generation of men. Like, dude, they just would do it every day, and like not complain.
That's the key.
Yeah, and like and even with gratitude, like I'm just grateful to have work.
Absolutely.
And there are. It's not that art didn't exist then and it does now. It's not. I'm not comparing any of those things. I'm comparing an approach to life and work.
Absolutely.
And so for me, there have definitely been times where I learned something by realizing I was slacking because I just wasn't feeling it. I'm just not feeling it. But like just doing it, like do the work.
Buckle up.
And sometimes it's because like people have paid an invoice and you've got to get it done.
Absolutely.
Or other times it's because like it's your job.
Yep.
Like, and I think that there will be days where like it's not art.
Yeah.
It's not fun. It's not creative. It's work.
And that's hard for me too, because like when I feel like it's not mine, I don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah. So don't use your desire to find your lane as an excuse to not sometimes just do the work.
Absolutely.
Because sometimes you just have to do the work.
Well, sometimes there's motivation in the work.
But in the same way, don't spend years doing something you don't enjoy.
Agreed.
A good friend, I would consider him a good friend. I don't know if he would consider me a good friend.
We're about to find out.
But I won't name drop, but this person is the type of person who just like nothing's impossible.
Yeah. I love that though.
And like there was a time in my life when I thought that what you were supposed to do to grow up was like you quit playing games, you get a real big boy job with good health insurance and benefits that you got to hate it. That's a prerequisite to being a man. You get married, you know, if you want to get married, you got to have that job you hate, you got to have that insurance, you got to have, you know, all those things in order.
Oh yeah.
And so I did that exact thing. I got a job I hated. It was for good people.
Sure.
And they were awesome. And they gave me an opportunity, which I'm thankful for. But man, did I hate that job. Mm-hmm. And I came off the rep, played music full time, and came home, wanted to get married. So I did my big boy stuff. And about a year into it, I was sitting across the hot tub from this individual. He and his wife were hanging out. They were in town visiting my wife and I just spewed this like hatred for my work life on him. And he listened, and I couldn't tell you exactly what he said, but he said the types of things that made me walk away wondering, like, what am I doing?
Sure.
He just has this outlook that, like, why are you doing it?
Exactly. Life's short.
Life's too short to hate a thing you're in. And it's not, for him, like, he's a successful, responsible, like, it's not that he's not doing his big boy.
Sure.
Like, he's way more big boy than I was because he, like, made the things that he was passionate about work.
Yes.
And he was disciplined enough to do it. And so for me, like, it was a huge lesson in that, like, I don't know, like, not that nothing's impossible, but that, like, why waste my time?
Absolutely.
If I feel like, and again, that is an excuse to, like, honey, I quit my job today.
Exactly.
Like, it doesn't work that way. I still worked that job for another long time. But I worked it with a different mindset.
Absolutely.
It's like, this isn't the end.
Yeah, exactly.
This isn't the
means
goal.
to an end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And so there's lessons on both sides of that. Mm-hmm. Like, don't be so petty that you can't go do the work. You can't go do the job that you don't love every second of. But don't be so, like, right now oriented.
Yes.
That you can't see into, like, hey, where am I going? Like, what do I want to do? Where do I want to be?
Yes. That one's tough for me. I'm really right now a lot.
Oh, me too.
I'm very spontaneous, not spontaneous so much, but like today's the day. Well, let's do it today. I'm not going to plan it 3 weeks from now. I'm going to do it today, maybe tomorrow, but I'm going to do it.
It's going to happen. Well, I think where I was coming from with the whole, like, right now thing is, like, right now I'm hungry. Right now, like, the mortgage is due.
Sure.
Right now, like, somebody's got to get my kids from school. Mm-hmm. Like, there's this, like, temptation to just, like, solve today's problem.
Yeah.
And a corporate 9 to 5, like, solves those problems for you every day.
Every day.
And so I'm just saying, don't be so lost in that day to day that you can't, if you want something different, you can't get there.
Absolutely.
And again, neither of these things are excuses for the other. Like I said, you can't come home and say, like, I quit my job because I want to be an artist. In the same way, you can't say, like, I don't feel like working today because I'm, like, want to explore. You can at times if you need time to explore yourself, go for it.
I'm a call in sick
and
explore myself.
But it goes both ways. And I think oftentimes that's the case, right? Those gray areas are sometimes the areas of the most growth and the most, like, traction. Like, you find out a lot about yourself.
Absolutely.
In those areas.
I mean, you always can. I mean, when times are the hardest, that's when we grow the most. I mean, that sucks. But it's like, you're not going to learn a new skill when, like, you're killing the skill that you're at right now.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like, if you don't have to learn a new skill, why? If everything's working. But, like, what if you did? Like,
don't be above it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Or think you're not capable of it.
Exactly.
And, you know, I think our culture and our nature is, like, if you see somebody who's, like, been in a lane for a long time and they shift, our thinking is like, oh, I wonder what happened.
They failed.
Why is that?
I don't know.
Did they fail, or are they just good at something else too?
Or do they hand that off and do something else they really
totally
enjoy? Yeah.
Another good friend, like, has shifted multiple times, and every time they shift, they become, like, one of the best at the new thing that they do. And so I don't think that don't assume that because someone shifts, that it's like, oh, I had a breakdown and just lost interest and failed miserably. And maybe they just shifted. Maybe they're still sort of doing the other thing too.
Absolutely. Maybe they started the business and they still own the business, but they don't run the business, 100%. So to speak.
So to rewind here, I think Chroma Creative started trying to be a lot of things it wasn't.
Sure.
It took that for us to figure out who we were.
Yep.
And we're still exploring who we are.
Sure.
We are still learning areas of what we do that we feel really drawn to, really naturally sort of good at, and are trying to expand on those things. But we're also still learning things that we aren't good at, and still handing those things off.
Sure. Well, I mean, you got anytime we get complacent, like, then we can't grow.
Totally. But it took those times for us to learn sort of what we wanted to try to specialize in, and I feel like we've experienced. The most success that we have experienced has been when we were the most focused.
Sure.
And so you may be hearing this podcast and thinking, well, why podcast then? Like, if your thing's storytelling through video, like, why
do we podcast?
Why podcast? And, I think we had these goals towards the end of 2021 that we said, to put it simply, like, we wanted to do the things that we were encouraging our clients to do.
Yep.
And one of the things that we encourage our clients to do is just to be present digitally, as many places and times that they can be, if they want to be relevant to in their market. And so for us, we're like, hey, and legitimately, Jeremy and I, if we wanted to, could spend our entire workday having these types of conversations.
1,000%.
So it's more or less just like, let's just film them.
Yeah.
Let's record and film them.
Well, I mean, it's like, even before this started, I asked Jordy, it's like, does this ever get easier? Like, hearing myself talk is not going to ever feel right. But it's like, we don't want to put people in front of our cameras and ask them to do things if we aren't willing to do it as well.
Totally.
To some degree.
100%. And, what you see on Instagram or what you see on YouTube is it's designed to be polished.
Absolutely.
That's maybe not the case fully with Instagram, but it's what we end up seeing on social media is a put together version of a business or a life.
Sure.
To me, this space, podcast, it feels like the most like unfiltered.
Agreed.
And so it feels honest.
I agree.
And like
very personable.
If you're like me out there listening to this, you overthink everything. And like, just since we've started talking today, I've relived conversations in my head.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, I could have said that differently.
I can see it in your face.
It's all over me. But man, I like there's power in just like letting it go.
Sure.
Like, just press record, press send, upload it, let people hear it, and then like if they've got, and oftentimes the critics are the ones that like don't have the guts to do it themselves.
Absolutely.
But, maybe they do, and maybe they're good at being critics. Maybe they found their lane.
That's true.
And they've specialized.
Being jerks. It's like my YouTube. Like, I'm not like successful or on any level on YouTube, but at the same time, it's like, I'm very genuine. I hit record and I just sit in front of the camera and I say what I'm going to say and I move on. Like, it is 100% broken and all me all the time.
I think this brings up a fantastic point to end on. You said just now, on YouTube, you're not successful by any measure. Well, I don't think that's true. I think it depends on how do you define success. In this scenario, like in the things that we've talked about today, money doesn't have to be, like, finances doesn't have to be the like motivating piece behind finding your lane.
Sure.
Like, fulfillment doesn't have to be. I think it's all about like what's your ultimate metric? What's your ultimate? If you describe like, I want to be successful in this area, defining that. Like, if for you it's like, I want to be financially independent, then that dictates a lot of the questions
that helps measure the success or not.
You may not need for me, there might be a little bit more leaning towards like, I really need to enjoy it.
Oh yeah.
But like, if what I ultimately enjoy is being financially independent, then like maybe I don't need to enjoy the process quite as much.
It could be work.
It can just be work towards my end, right? And again, these aren't right and wrong.
No.
As if we're the ones that get to decide if it's right or wrong. But I'm just saying.
We just decided.
I think that defining, as you get into anything, but especially your life's work, defining what is success for you, I think is a big part of that. Like, I have, well, sort of a photo camera, but for me, like success, For me, success in photography is like, I like what I make.
Yeah.
It's not tied in any way to like metrics or money or other people's appreciation of it. For me, photography is like, if I look at the photo, I'm like, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm into it.
Sure.
The same isn't true for video for me.
Sure.
Like if when I'm watching back a piece of content that we've created for a client, like if I don't feel like, man, this tells their story so well, then I'm not like, but I might see shots that are like, oh, that's rad.
Sure.
But it's not the same.
I get that.
So I think defining what success looks like in the area that you want to be successful in is incredibly important.
Sure.
Before you start figuring out what is my lane, because I think that dictates it big time.
I agree. But even like we mentioned earlier, it's like, I don't have to be successful in YouTube to learn from it, to
Totally.
grow from it. You know, it's like,
Well, like you've told me exactly that. Like you enjoy the process.
Yeah.
You enjoy making the content, editing it. You enjoy that, pressing the upload button. You even said, like, I enjoy watching statistics. Like, you're not bummed out if you don't, kill it on a video. You might get super excited when you do, but...
I'll let you know.
The point is, like, you've been successful.
Sure.
Because those things have been true.
Absolutely.
As you've worked through it.
Sure.
So I think the point, I keep saying that.
The takeaway.
I got to have takeaway. I think it's, go for it. In tons of areas.
I agree.
Define what success looks like. Figure out the areas that you feel like you've experienced that success and lean hard into those areas.
Agreed.
Don't stop doing other things.
Sure.
But try spending time focused in those areas and see what happens.
Yep.
A friend that I've mentioned in this podcast already told me right before I went full time, he's like, you got to create a Jordy Wetzel shaped hole in the universe and see what it sucks in.
That's cool.
And so I did that.
Yeah.
And the hole has taken new shape over years.
Sure.
Over the years. And I think it's, when you think about a vacuum, as the hole gets smaller, man, it gets more powerful. And so what a picture.
That's a great metaphor.
Oh, he's brilliant. What a way to think about your time and your skill set and your passion. And one thing I will say is, if you let other people, they will fill that hole for you.
Sure.
And they'll undercompensate you for it. They'll undervalue you along the way. I'm not saying this always happens, but I think it can.
Oh, very quickly.
So you owe it to yourself to create a U-shaped hole in the universe and see what it sucks in. Again, I can't claim that. It's not mine.
I don't even want to say anything after you say that. I just want to end on that. It's so good.
So go do it. Maybe don't. I don't know.
We think you should.
We think you should. You should try. Yeah. So, hey, if you guys have thoughts, questions, concerns about us, let us know. We have a place for those concerns.
Absolutely.
We love what we do.
Very much.
Feel unbelievably blessed to be able to do it, especially the world that we live in, have lived in for the past few years. And I hate even saying words like that.
I'm not even gonna do it.
But man, we feel blessed to be able to do what we do. For us, success for this podcast is we've already done it.
Oh yeah.
The box has been checked. We've sat here, had a glass of whiskey, and enjoyed chatting. And we hope that you've enjoyed it. And we'll see y'all next time.
On the next one.
Peace.
Later.